Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I am your host, Kieran. And okay, so today's episode is another, I don't know if we want to call it body image awareness, but maybe more of like body understanding. I've talked to you guys about, I've been in the midst of my own perimenopause journey. And so getting to know this body that's a lot different than maybe the body I had 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and probably different from what will be in 5-10 years. It's ever evolving, like our identity. And while I've been in this moment of my life where I am really doing some work of like the scripts and the narratives that have been ingrained in me as a kid of the 80s who grew up with this expectation of what women's bodies should be like. And I think in this moment, I'm also drawing this energy where I'm meeting a lot of women of all ages, South Asian women, women of all races who we're kind of starting to open this door and talk a little bit more about sometimes it feels like we have done something wrong and are, like in particular done something wrong in existing in our bodies. And I think we're always a few steps away from quote unquote being better or smaller or tighter, more toned, more disciplined. And so a lot of us women, we have this feeling that hasn't really come out of nowhere, but it's if we want to make change, if we want to leave the door open in understanding our bodies and feeling comfortable and loving them for the next generation, we kind of got to go backwards and figure out like, where did this come from? Why do we feel the way we do? Why are we so quiet about it? Why don't we share our experiences and how we were taught? And so we kind of got to go backwards a little bit. And today's conversation is about how things have been taught, how they've been reinforced, and how to unpack that. And with me today, I have a wonderful woman that I think is here to have a conversation that's been long overdue. So I'm sitting down with a South Asian woman named Andrea, and she works in mental health, and she's also been challenging. This is what got me to bring her on, is that I came across a really important video in the content that she promotes. And so all of this, I guess what I'm trying to say is that as a South Asian woman, she's working in mental health, and she's also challenging, as I was saying, something so many of us have been carrying quiet. Maybe we feel comfortable talking with a friend or a relative, someone like in our little tight-knit community. But outside of that, we as women, we don't share what we feel, the insecurities we feel, and what the world's gaze has been teaching us about what we should think about our bodies. And so this idea of what our bodies are supposed to look like is something that Andrea talks about in her content. She challenges like what we're supposed to look like versus where we are and how to find the health from inside out. I love her story. She immigrated from Singapore to Australia, and that's where she currently is. And through her work and content, she's sharing something a lot of us, again, don't hear enough. And that is you can commit to your health. You can eat well. You don't have to diet. You don't have to eat less. And you don't have to restrict. You still, in worrying about all of that, not having this body that we're told is right. So you don't have to worry about your body's not good enough when we go to the gym, when we look in the mirror, when we get dressed. And I think a lot of what she talks about as well is that for many of us in our brown bodies, there's more going on when it comes to how we build muscle, how we store fat, how our bodies are actually designed, like the science behind it. A South Asian woman's body is going to build muscle and respond to workouts and protein and all that differently than an Asian woman, a Black woman, a white woman. And yet we're all kind of boxed in the same category of this is sort of the one template. This is what we should follow. This is what we should do. And then when we're not seeing results, we're like, oh, this is me. I'm the problem. I'm doing something wrong. And Andrea is all about saying, no, we need to scrap that. We need to start talking about what is it like being in my body. body and understanding and becoming attuned to it. And so I think today what we're really going to get into is our bodies, expectations, what we've been misunderstanding about ourselves and about each other. I think we're just as hard on each other as we are on ourselves, and what it looks like to kind of start questioning these sorts of stereotypes, these expectations that society has put on us when it comes to our body. So I know I said a lot. My mind is kind of everywhere because I hold this topic so personally. I'm kind of in this interesting place, and I'm open and I'm honest and I'm vulnerable to talk about it. But I will say there's been a lot of humbling in my world too, as I've put on a significant amount of weight during this perimenopause phase. And it's getting me to pause and rebuild my relationship with me and my body. And I'm excited, but also a little nervous to talk about this because I think when we open these doors, sometimes as women, the fear is of how it'll be received. So I'm really hoping everyone showing up today in this conversation with Andrea and I will show up with bravery, with vulnerability, with curiosity, and a whole lot of grace. So Andrea, welcome. How are you today in the morning of Australia? You're like 70,000 hours ahead of me.
I know. Like when I searched up the difference, I was like, oh God, 16 and a half hours ahead, basically in the future.
You are. I'm in the past. You're in the future. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah.
Things that you're not yet.
It's so true. And it's so funny you say that because the first question I have been asking in the last little while to all my guests is this question about if you were to get into a time machine with me and go back to the past, what age would you go back and meet yourself? So what's the age, and what would you tell yourself at that age, knowing what you know now about your own body and the work that you're doing about body awareness?
Oh my God. That is. So I think the reason why that question, I think, gets me a little bit is because from the ages of 11 to 18, they have all been such terrible, strifled years. And I think one particular age that I think I would like to go back to is specifically 17.
Okay.
17 was an age where first of all, it was a very traumatic birthday in itself. Like, I remember writing like these letters, and I brought them down to my parents, and I finally told them that, I want my freedom, I want my independence. I wanted to have a proper adult to adult conversation, and I thought that they would treat me like that at the age of 17. Little did I know that that didn't happen. But in terms of not only struggling with trying to be an adult, trying to understand who I am and prove that to my parents, I think at that age, at 17, there was just so many things going on. I would run frequently 3 to 4 times in a week, every morning at 6 a.m. before anyone woke up. I remember vividly that when I would go to school, I would make sure to choose the smallest lunch from the canteen, like always the smallest size. I would make sure to drink so much water throughout the day so that I could suppress my hunger cues. There was just so many vivid things that I would do at that age. And I was so pervasively aware of the way I looked. Every single mirror reflective glass that I would walk by, I would always check, and I was so aware, and I would scan myself and how I looked like. And I think if I could just go back in time, I would love to just sit down with her, just hold her hand, and just be like, you don't have to shrink yourself to be good enough. You don't have to do that. Because I think the language, I didn't have that language to what I was doing. I was just doing it. I was just trying to, I don't know whether it was a reaction to everything that was going on, or whether it was these really core instilled beliefs in me that I was just then responding to them. And as a domino effect of what those beliefs that I had in me, I think, I just would have just loved to sit down with my old self and just been like, this is what you're doing. This is why you're doing it. This is what you're trying to do. You know, you never really got the unconditional love that you so desperately wanted from your parents. So you conditionally started to do things to yourself unknowingly. And I just would have wanted to just hug her because she was just doing the best that she could at that time. She didn't know any better. She was just reacting and responding and had this fiery way of being because everything was just like a hose trying to cave in and not allow the version of me to expand and to grow in the right ways. So yeah, that's what I would do.
I think you said a lot of important things that young women, young girls, young boys can really benefit from hearing over and over to sort of override, and in some ways you almost have to overcorrect these things, as you're saying, that were instilled. And 17 is such a pivotal age because you're going through such a hormonal shift in your adolescence, so your body is changing and you're also almost this adult, so you may even already look like a woman and an adult, and you're trying to fit that skin. And you brought up a really important word, which was conditioning. And I think a lot of us brown kids grew up with that conditioning mentality. So a lot of our love was transactional. So if you look good, if you got good grades, you did these sorts of things, and you would get the whatever love rewards and those kinds of things. And I hear that from guests that come on and say that that's been really hard to undo as we get, older. And so it sounds like you've learned sort of the things that younger you maybe misunderstood that you see differently now. And I think that's the whole beauty of our identities evolving and us growing as humans in this like lifespan, which is to go back and give ourselves that opportunity and say, hey, like, girl, like you thought you were doing what you're supposed to do. And I see how you're making up for it in the content and the work that you are doing now. So was there a time, like, how did you get to this place where you realize that maybe your body wasn't the problem, but the messaging was? How did you get to that place? And when did you get to that place?
Oh, I don't think it was one particular moment. I think, and I think if I'm going to be completely honest, like I'm not completely healed or gotten to this point in my life where I'm completely immune from feeling things or feeling down about myself or examining my own self and being like, oh, I think there's a little, but the self-talk though that I immediately have afterwards is so strong. Like I immediately catch myself and I'm like, whoa, no, we are not thinking about ourselves today. No, 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 no. Like I think that talk is so powerful. But going back to your question, it's just been a compilation of just going through the years, because every year, ever since moving to Australia, so I moved here in 2019, every single year has brought its own challenges. I'll give you an example of 2021. I was in this really toxic relationship with this guy that didn't want to be with me, but would always comment on my body, would comment on my cellulite, would comment on how I looked in dresses and blah, blah, blah. And so I had to develop this routine in order to appease him. In another year, I completely stopped working out altogether just so that I could develop a better relationship with myself. But that also had a lot of challenges in a sense of I used running, I used, all these sorts of healthy habits as a coping mechanism. And now that I don't have these as a coping mechanism anymore for the actual thoughts that I have about my own self, that also brought in a lot of like, oh my God, I am back to my 17-year-old self again, which I thought I healed,
Yeah.
but really these were all just coping mechanisms for how I truly felt. And then fast forward to last year. I think last year was a really pivotal year in my life for the first time at 25. I think every single year has been so difficult and tiring and fatiguing, but I think 2025 was the year where I think the universe was like, right, she needs to come full circle. And it was really when I could access therapy for the first time. And I connected with this beautiful third culture Indian woman who's like myself, which is just so rare and niche anyways. Like if you just think about it, and the fact that I could connect with someone that was like me in my own cultural upbringing with as a therapist, like that was mind blowing. And I was able to do this evidence-based therapy called EMDR, and we were able to process through specific traumatic memories that were really instilled in my brain. I have a lot of difficulty with my short-term memory, but with my long-term memory, it's so strong. Like I will remember what happened to me at 6, what happened to me at 7, what happened to me at 5, what happened around me and what was going on, all the negative stuff. And these memories had a really strong grasp on me, and I didn't realize that those particular memories stored beliefs, stored values, stored just a whole lot of beliefs around me that I didn't realize that I was carrying with me. And a lot of it did stem from comparison, from body issues, from all of the things that I thought were just normal when I would be in the fitness space or when I would just be working out or whatever. And I'd have these thoughts, I'm like, oh, this is normal because, yeah. But when I released those memories, particularly the negative ones, and processed through them, I no longer truly feel comparison. I no longer truly feel like there's something inherently wrong with my body. And I felt this release. And it only took a couple sessions. And when I would then go to the gym, when I would then work out, I started recognizing, holy crap, I have been living in a prison my whole life. And when I would be doing more sessions and developing more self-awareness for my coping mechanisms, why I do things the way that I do, and when I would look online and I would just be a passive user of social media, things that would be circulating around body image, around issues that I struggled with would be so normalized, so superficial, so like basic, that I just felt a deep passion and fire inside me that no, someone needs to speak out more about the things that go deeper than that. It's not so clear cut, black and white as you see about it. And so for me, it's really taken a long time, very long time, from 11 to 25. 11 years old was when I vividly remember how self-conscious I was around my body. Like when I got access to a weighing scale for the first time and I cried. Like those were just such vivid, specific memories that I have. So 11 to 25, and now I'm turning 27. So I'm still in this journey. I don't feel like I have figured everything out, but for me, the intersection between mental health and fitness, reckoning with that, with my own experiences, and now wanting to so passionately share that intersection online, along with my own unique struggles as an Indian woman, I think that has really brought full circle. And I think putting words and creating a form of art online and sharing it, I think that also has been a second part to the journey. You know, for me, even the creative process of putting that all together, of packaging it, I think it does something to myself and not just the viewer. So
I think that's so well said. Maybe I'll start with the latter. Like I love when, as a community, we are utilizing creative expression, that goes to show that as a community, we're starting to thrive, because arts and culture, in my opinion, is thriving. And I also feel that we process so different. So for us to have this kind of platform on social media these days, and when it's used in an ethical, healthy way in putting out information, I think people can benefit then, that, okay, maybe I'm not ready for talk therapy, but I like how this person is posting through this artistic way. And there's so many different ways to do it. And I think today we have so many ways to relate. And I think that's why we're trying to break and build cycles at the same time, because we have a lot of information in the ways it comes. And I think part of what I hear you saying too, when you talk about, okay, look, I'm not healed, it's like you're bang on. Like, we can't be healed. We have to kind of walk alongside, because we're going to go through multiple identities in the lifespan, and each one kind of builds off of the other. And I think a lot of us probably grew up feeling like, okay, I'm almost there, we're almost there, but never quite right in our bodies. And I think now we're questioning that a bit. Like, why is that? And is that okay? And how much of it is healthy? And, like my sister and I, we created 2 rules for our we're very close. And so we talk all the time. And the last time I saw her, which was recently, we said, okay, we need these 2 rules when we talk about things. And one of those 2 rules was we were not allowed to nag about our body image, whether it be the hairiness, whether it be, we're getting older, whether it be our body. Like, we have to stop it. We can't use up this beautiful space of talking together and bash ourselves. We have to actively be in the process of change. And so when the thoughts of, I gotta share, like, oh God, I look terrible, or this role or this part of my body, we have to kind of beat ourselves to it. Like you said, you try to get there faster now when you're like, oh, I'm having this negative thought, or I'm thinking this way. And I think it's just challenging that more and more. So what messages did you grow up with? Was it similar to Australia, similar to the rest of the world we're in, where we get certain messages growing up about bodies? Like, what would you say was sort of the kind of conversations being had for you as a young girl growing up?
So I grew up in Hong Kong, but in Hong Kong, there is a very popular beauty standard, and we call them like Eurasians. So they're a mixture of European and Asians together. So that's our sort of, I don't know if it's a common thing amongst other countries.
It's brilliant, because it makes sense.
Yes. And so they were the idealized, popular, like any school you go to, any magazine place, like they loved that. They loved that fusion, because it was not too white, it was not too Asian, it was just the perfect mix of balance in between. And when I think about it, in my school, like there was lots of people that had, let's say German parents with a Filipino mom. Like, there was just very different and common melanges of cultures together. And when I kind of think back to the messages, the inherent beliefs that I would gather from school, first off, they were very petite. They had a very petite frame. Obviously, they were lighter in complexion. They had very European features, but had the softness of an Asian person as well. They were completely hairless. They didn't need to go through these complete cosmetic procedures like I would usually have to go waxing like all the time. And when I would be invited to parties, or in Hong Kong, it's very common to have junk boat parties where you rent a junk boat. So it's like a village kind of boat, and you gather like 20, 30 people together, and you just spend the day driving out to an island, and you just have fun. And that's a very common thing where you do in the summer. And in these moments, I would become very, very hyper aware of my body being very different to theirs. And it wasn't the subtle, like, oh, you look so different. Like, it wasn't anyone saying that, but it was me having a bikini on and recognizing, oh shoot, like my bump is, you know, my lower belly's a little bit bigger and pervasive than theirs. There's all this food here. I should probably not eat as much so that I don't bloat, because I'm a big bloater after food. And I've been very transparent with that on social media. And sometimes the conversations at school, like, oh, what do you do? Like, what's your routine like? And they're like, oh, I don't really do much. In my inner circle, like I had friends that just never worked out, that never ran, that had the most unhealthiest lifestyle, I would say, like had Coke, would have fast food all the time, but they just had this really nice figure. And for me, I had the complete opposite. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., do yoga, go for a run, like then do a YouTube workout. Like I had such a stringent routine in order to maintain whatever it was at that time, this unattainable weight at 45, 50 kilos, that my body was just so not wanting to be at, but I was trying so hard to make sure I was there. I think those were sorts of the things that I recount, and that started making me feel really consciously aware, especially at school. I think in the home, it was also another story. I'm sure you and so many other South Asian women can relate to this, but when we'd be invited to family gatherings or when we'd eat at the dinner table or whatnot, the conversations about weight is just so normal. And it's not necessarily positive, it's just very point blank matter of fact, you know, where I would constantly get comments of like, oh, you're getting a lot bigger. You're eating a lot. Oh, you're a lot thinner. You need to eat more. And obviously, when someone from the outside, like outside of our culture, can kind of look at that, it's like, oh, I guess they're coming from a concerned lens. They're, you know, trying to look out for you, look out for what's best for you. But I don't think it really came from that place. I truly believe that it really came from, whether you call it judgmental, but these thoughts, it happened to them, and then it happened to our grandmas, and then it happened to, so it's just a compilation of so many thoughts and beliefs and attitudes that have just been so concrete and instilled in everyone else's mind. And I think it didn't help that my family, we had lots of beautiful food growing up. You know, my mom was an amazing cook. She used to cook beautiful Chinese food. She used to cook very good Gujarati food, lots of nice curries. But there was no awareness of nutrition. And I became very, very hyperfixated on having reduced sugar, having reduced oil, making sure I don't eat too many carbs. And that would ignite a lot of arguments, a lot of fights, a lot of conversations that were negative, because that education almost took it as criticism to the like food making, her providing for the family, her just doing her best, her just knowing what she knows. And so any education or any comments around, hey, maybe we should do this, hey, maybe we should do that, oh, can we do this? That really came with a lot of fights. And yeah. And so my ability to monitor what I ate was very, I just couldn't monitor at all the food, what I ate. So I put all of my control into exercise and what I could control. And so I just had a very bizarre, very unhealthy sort of routine, very stringent routine that I would follow because I couldn't control much in the home environment, especially around what I ate. So I made sure to control everything around the food at school and around my routine. But yeah, those were some of the things, beliefs, attitudes that I had growing up from both of the school side as well as the home environment as well.
I think there's, again, probably a good chunk of us that are listening in and thinking, okay, this was in many ways, my experience is relatable. Maybe it wasn't the food, it was the exercise, or the other, definitely with the comments. Food is so interesting because in a lot of the BIPOC communities, it's like the soul of every gathering. And so I can appreciate a mom or an auntie or whoever is doing all the hard work in making real food, and then the response back. And it's what you said, like the communication is like two ships kind of like sailing through the night, where you're not really communicating what's actually happening here. You needed guidance as a young teenager to learn, your body and exploring like what health actually is. And your mom knows what she knows, and the what we don't know, we're not able to communicate with. So maybe we can do a little bit of body truth, like, because any of us looks into any of this, we go down these rabbit holes with stats and information. And I think any kind of research, I think that's hard because we want education in this. And as our community, we're just learning the importance of body, mind, and how our nervous system manages that, even though it comes from our ancestry. But, we've lost it along the way for many reasons. And so when we go look at research and data and stats, it's really limited, and it's on men, even if it is if in our community. And I think a lot of what we come back to is this idea that BMI, so the body mass index, it's a blunt tool. It was from 1 billion years ago to just document height and weight, and it's being used till this day in fitness sort of spaces, and it doesn't tell us anything about muscle, fat distribution, hormones, stress. And when you look at South Asians, us Indian people, like our bodies, there are patterns showing more where fat is stored. So around the abdomen, that's a big place. Even if you have a lower BMI, you're like looking at this paper that a fitness person gave you, and anything on paper becomes factual. And now we're like, well, it's telling me this, so I must be okay. And meanwhile, diabetes is forming because we're not connecting the dots. And I think it's not just biology. It's like, okay, this is muscle mass, it's diet shifts, diet culture, stress, lifestyle, all of it's working together. And then when you look at some of this information, you also realize a lot of this research is actually based on Indians living outside of South Asia. So the diaspora populations are going to experience difference with stress, environment, the food that we process. And a lot of it goes from the beginning of our history and what changed through colonization and what the scarcity of food and all that. So we don't have access to our history in the way that we could, some of us, not all of us. And then we are not linked to, well, there's no stats on us. And so then we're kind of making these sorts of things off of the Eurocentric, the white people, where most of the information comes from white man's body. And so we're like, oh, okay, so this is what I have to do. So I think, the content is completely different. So hearing this, experiencing this, doing your own work that you're doing, like when you kind of put this together, does it match what you're seeing in real life, what you're seeing on social media with other content creators, lived experience, maybe people at the gym? Like, sort of what's your take and add on to all of these different things that are playing a factor, but we're not really attuned to it and maybe aware of it in the way that we need to be, that would help us?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, like the BMI, it's been an instrument that has been very much debunked, and I hope to God that no one really uses it anymore in terms of their research and in terms of it being a proper measurement of health and the expectations from it. But again, like going from a macro perspective, a lot of the systems in place are built for white people and for their values and things like that. Even in university, one of the things that really disheartened me and made me less inclined to be a psychologist when I was studying psychology was the fact that all of the research that I was looking at was specifically targeting individuals from Western, educated, industrialized, democratic countries. And When you take, and you know, most of those studies, in fact, were students from the university as well, right? So you also have that privileged aspect. And so, and this is just in regards to human behavior, how we understand all of the research that is done from psychology itself, which is really worrying in itself. But when we look at other fields like sports science, like exercise physiology and things like that, I'm sure it's very similar, right? Most of the research is most likely from students in universities. And when we take lots and lots of data from very particular people, from very particular countries, you're going to have a standard of the 10%, right? You're going to have maybe even the 1%, I don't know. And that perspective, the data, the overarching mindset that we now then have of health and fitness is going to be so flawed, but so overarchingly true that no one dares question it. Because everyone's like, the research says that, the data says that. We're not going to go against science. Are you not a scientist? The system has almost been set up in the fact that we solely rely on science and scientific research as a way of providing evidence and in gathering truths, but then no one wants to question the actual framework of how they gather data in the first place. And so health and fitness, as I have always dabbled in that space, I think it's always been presented as a very black and white aspect of framework, whatever you kind of perceive it. The whole discipline in itself has been very calories in, calories out. You do a caloric deficit, you lose weight. You do a caloric surplus, you gain weight. And there have been certain things that have come to light, you know, especially around women's conditions like PCOS, how people are now starting to get a little bit of an awareness that PCOS, oh my God, it's super hard to lose weight based on so many physiological conditions that are going on that people are now starting to pick on. Still not as near as well known as it should be, but it's starting to pick up momentum. And women's health is starting to create a spotlight. But then we go into the minority communities that have barely had a place in the fitness world. If you go back to the 70s, the 80s, the bodybuilding eras, the DVD recordings, the tapes that many people would buy and put in their homes to follow along workouts, they have all been white bodies being presented. And that lack of representation, and now us sort of challenging that space and us finally breaking entry and following the routines and the advice of everyone else that has made progress, that has then outlined these very perfect conditions of this X plus Y equals Z. And now that I'm doing it for myself, I'm finding very different results. Now, I'm not sort of coming on here and saying, oh, a calorie deficit doesn't work. Absolutely, it does. All of those things do work, but it's going to vary very differently to different people. For instance, online, it's so popular to see that one caloric deficit for someone is going to get them their dream body. Right? Going from 65 kilos to maybe like 58, 55 for a lot of women. They look really toned, they look quite lean, and it's because they've also had some muscle mass to begin with as well. But no one told me that it's taking me 3 caloric deficits and it's going to take me several more to get to a leaner state. I received so many comments on my video saying, stop promoting obesity, stop promoting diabetes. You just need to do a caloric deficit. And it's just.
And can I just say, just to give context if people haven't seen, in your videos, like when you work out, you're very open and sharing like a lot of us have a belly. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're not fit, we're not healthy, but like, you know, and we're going to talk about this flat belly syndrome, but I think
Yeah.
that's where those messages are coming in, because you're not being a flat belly, six pack fitness influencer or whatever these people
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So then when they see you working out, they're like, this chick's got rolls. So obviously she doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah.
For me, that one video when you were like, I don't know what you were doing a laying down exercise and your belly was showing. And I was like, that is what actually made me reach out to you, because I was like, okay, like finally, because how many of us women are going to see this and be like, oh, it's not just me. I'm not doing something wrong. Like, and so that's normal. This is so it's going to take us so long to get to the space where it's normalized to have these different body types being healthy in very similar kinds of way. But what's happening on the outside isn't necessarily what's occurring on the inside. And no, we're not talking about the inside ever. We're just like, look this way. And then, you know, and doctors do it too. Like, as I've gained all this weight in the last little while, my doctor said the same thing too, right? Like, means well, but you got to eat less and you got to move more. And it's like, okay, well, I already move a lot, and I can't be starving. Like, that's just something that I committed to when I worked on my eating issues from the past. So it's like, I'm not going to do that. So obviously there's something else hormonal is what we're learning. Cause I'm in perimenopause. So you talk about PCOS, you talk about other hormonal shifts that happen. I mean, you look at adolescence, right? When like you said, when we get made fun of, like we're in the prime of like learning about our body. And as girls, we're gaining all this weight. Yeah. And we're like, oh shit, something's happening to us that's wrong. But our body, it goes through different lifespans in the same way that we do mentally and emotionally and what. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to paint the picture of like, this is what your videos are, of like a real person who is sharing their health journey, so that more women like us can look at that and say, oh, okay, so this cool. Like, this is okay to show up at the gym and look like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'm starting to love about a lot of creators as well, white Caucasian creators, I love how some of them are like, I am 30% in body fat. And some of them, I'm like, what? Like, I get shocked sometimes when they come out and say, yeah, I'm 27%. Or, you know, they have these figures. And it is so fascinating, because there was this one specific creator that I follow, and she has got this perfect, beautiful hourglass figure, right? All the fat in the right places. And she's got a very flat stomach, and you could sort of visibly see us, but not really there. And, you know, I thought she was 25%. She looked very, very toned and very muscular. And she was like, yeah, I'm 30%. And so many people in that video got so outraged and triggered, and they're like, no, you're lying. No, you're lying. Absolutely not. She's like, guys, she had to make a follow-up video saying, guys, fat is stored differently for different people. God bless me with great genetics where I can hold fat in the right places, according to beauty standards and whatever. But it's going to look very different for different people. And what people don't realize is I actually am 25% body fat, yet I still have a belly. I still don't have abs, and I am at a very healthy weight as well. And obviously it's going to take me a lot more years, a lot more training, a lot more focus on nutrition. Not that I already haven't, but just more years, more time to then get to a point that when I am in that 20% body fat, I will have that very muscular, lean look. Because if I entered a calorie deficit now, so that means reducing your calories, losing weight intentionally, I'm not going to have that lean toned look. I absolutely know that, because I just still haven't built enough muscle for me to get that look. And I'm at that point where I have finally recognized that. But I think a lot of women, South Asian women, or other women that have start with a very high body fat percentage or start with the particular fat distribution that I have, they have these particular mindsets, these particular expectations that have been sort of fed them. Mm-hmm. And they are not understanding these things the way that I so easily do now.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's like a method to, I guess, the madness, if you want to say it. But I think sometimes where the confusion comes is when you think of fitness and then you think of life stages. So if you want to go and save money and do like a group fitness class, you might have someone your age and someone my age, someone older, but we're doing the exact same exercises and they're going to hit all of us different. Yeah. And I might need a lighter pace given whatever hormonal journey I'm in, and the woman older than me might need something different than maybe you. But we get boxed in the same category. And then when we don't see those kinds of results, I think that's where the discouragement and then the focus on looking a certain way, which is like different than we haven't been taught from day one that this isn't about looking fit. It's about being healthy and fit, and that can come in different shapes and sizes. But when we're taught the way we have been, now we have a lot of catching up to do and realize, okay, hold on a second. Maybe high intensity workouts aren't my jam anymore like they used to be. I got to find something that helps my stress levels and my cortisol levels and all these. And I think a big part of what we're talking about today too is like the job really is becoming attuned to our bodies. Mm-hmm. And my husband made a really interesting point. He did something that was out of his everyday kind of character. He had to speak on stage. And that's not something he does, but he had to do it for work. And we were talking about it over the weekend, like, oh, so it's been a week. Like, what have you learned? Anything else pop in your head about that experience? And he's like, it's so interesting, like how my body would go through moments of like, I was okay, but then all of a sudden the nerves would come. And then they'd go away and then the nerves would come. And we talked about how it's probably the first time in his life where he's learning how to become attuned, because the body's giving us a bunch of signs, whether we're in a stressful situation or we're working out to the point where that is unsafe for us, unhealthy, and we're not paying attention to that because we have a look in our mind that we're trying to get to. And so the longer I'm at the gym, the more things I do might mean that I'll be lean or the kind of fit that I want to be. But there's like, it's like an algorithm. It's 1 + 1 = something. And we don't quite understand that. So then we don't get the results. And we're in a culture where we want results quick. That whole industrialization that you talked about, that whole revolution, put that in our head, that this conveyor belt society of get diet culture, pills, gummies, whatever it may be, we can do that too to help us get to where we want to get to faster. So we're up against all these interesting things that it's ultimately up to us to decide, going back to values and beliefs of like, what does this health journey mean to me? I don't know if you want to add to that, but I kind of wanted to move to the flat belly myth, because that's been on my mind, and we touched on that a little bit. So I don't know if you want to add to what I just said before we move to the next thing.
Yeah, I think we can move on to the flat belly, because that is a whole other conversation itself. But
it is. It's been an obsession, and I've been thinking, like I said, I'm rebuilding my relationship with my own body in my mid 40s, and the flat belly always comes to mind. And somebody a long time ago had taught me flat abs are made in the kitchen. And so for like a billion years, I had a picture of a white, like supermodel in my pantry in her bikini, and flat abs are made in the kitchen. And just recently I was like, what the fuck is this picture? Like, let's get this out of here. Like, what am I doing? I got teen boys, like, what are we teaching them? Right. So again, like, learning, unlearning. And when we think of flat belly myth, I think it's this thing that a lot of us have been chasing, and it's like, not even rooted in health science. So where does it come from, right? It comes from the Euro Western beauty standards. I'm going to zone in on a particular era because that was kind of the era I grew up in, but I know every decade, every era can say, oh yeah, this happened in ours. But I would remember in the 90s, it was like the heroine model look, the Kate Mosses. So these supermodels were super anorexic-y, skin and bones, and lowrider jeans are in now. So Britney's wearing them. And so this flat belly is being exposed. And what's so fascinating is as Indians, we have been exposing our bellies for fucking forever in our outfits. And they were real women bodies.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, again, capitalism, society, misogyny, patriarchy, all these kind of isms in the world come together and they form this ultimate evil villain of, oh yeah, right. So now when you want to be fit, you got to find a trainer that has a flat belly. You got to have a flat belly. And for us in our race, that's actually really hard to obtain. Like, right? So, and that's part of why you do what you do. Cause this is again, your own learnings and findings as well of like, oh, okay. So I don't know if you want to add to this thing that we've been chasing that's not really built for our bodies in mind.
No. And I think this is the issue, right? Is the fitness industry is an industry that wants to profit off of vulnerable people, right? That wants to profit off of people that don't have the time to research, that are ignorant by default, not from their own wrongs, but just due to so much misinformation that people are just so exhausted or even burnt out by the thought of trying to go down their own rabbit holes and unpack things. But it is just so easy to sell a pill, sell a workout program, sell someone's particular service based on how they look. And when you follow an influencer, when you join a service online, when you buy someone's workout program, a lot of people buy from someone where they want to envision themselves, who they want to be, because their body is almost like a vessel for the consumer of, oh, this is where I could be. It's their vision. It's like a vision board, if that makes sense. And so fitness is now like selling you the vision of your physique. It's not about reducing osteoporosis in the future. It's not about being able to functionally lift grocery bags.
Recover from hip or knee surgery should you need it at some point, especially in the elderly senior ages.
No.
You're right, it's not, right?
No.
So
yeah. And I think that's why people get so triggered with content like mine, is because A, I don't have the ideal physique, and B, I'm not showing a transformation. That's not my content. I don't show before and the after, which is very popularized on social media. It's the quick before and after, and you're like, oh my God, that's so inspiring. But little do people know that that middle part, the sticky part, the difficult part, that actually most people are in. Most people, in fact, almost all people are in. Nobody likes to talk about that. Nobody likes to focus on that. Nobody likes to delve into it, mess around with it, call out the bullshit when we're in it. And I think that's why I'm so passionate in what I am trying to do, is I am trying to actually embody where I am, where I'm not where I started, but I'm not also where I wanting to go, but I don't really care. I'm in this phase where I'm trying my best. I'm doing everything that I can. But I also want to outline these concepts, these beliefs that we have, so that people in the middle can feel encouraged, can feel empowered, because I think people that are not there yet have always been empowered by this vision of an unrealistic physique, or a physique that you will obtain like in 5-6 years time.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time, I want people to be empowered with where they are now.
Yeah.
With what they can do now, with unpacking that the journey, the idea of gaining strength each day, the idea of doing little by little with what you have is powerful in itself. And you don't have to achieve something. You don't have to metamorphose in this like particular body type to be good enough, to feel good enough, to feel like you have made it, to feel successful, to be successful. And so a lot of people feel very triggered by it because that's the version they have always been sold, right? And so not only me as a South Asian woman as well, like I think that is also just triggering in itself.
Yeah. No, of course it is. Yeah. That's so true.
And so, yeah, like when I showcase my unedited, authentic self, the body that I have been given, the body that has been through so much, and the body that is still evolving but not there yet, I think it does something to people. I think it does something in itself for them to recognize, shit, I can take up space. I can take up space in a way where I can start now. I can, not feel bad about doing something in the moment right now. I don't have to get to a place first.
Yes, like there are women in our community that feel they got to lose 20 pounds before they can even join the gym.
Yes.
Because you have to look a certain way. And
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what you said, is we're chasing the after picture. Yeah. But like, how many of us look back at a picture of 10, 15, 5 minutes ago and we're like, damn, that was great. I want to be that person. So it's like we think we're chasing the after, but we forget that we actually long for what just happened. And I think we have to get very uncomfortable. Like we have to ask ourselves, okay, so like when was the last time that I avoided wearing something that I liked?
Yeah.
When is the last time that I didn't take a picture, or when a picture was taken, my mood went whoosh down because I zeroed in myself, not the moment that I was having, and I didn't like how I looked. When was the last time that I didn't go somewhere? I gave up in the middle of getting ready because I just couldn't show up in the way that I thought I should have looked. When was the last time that I held myself back? Because because of how you felt in your body.
Yeah.
And I think not in theory, like actually. So we have to do this go through this, like this check thing with ourselves, because sometimes I think sometimes even as women, we are looking for something from other women, and we'll mention something and we'll say, oh, like I gained weight or I don't look great. And the other woman in the room is likely going through the same thing, but she'll want to be your cheerleader and say, no, you look great. Don't feel bad. And I think she's doing the best she can, but maybe it's like we got to connect and be like, man, I know what that's like. I have those thoughts in the day as well. And this is why I think the way that you choose to share your information is like, okay, this is real life. And people can fuck off. That's fine. There's going to be those kinds of people in all sorts of realms. But really what matters are the ones that are like, and you're not always going to get responses or likes, because I feel sometimes when it hits so close. I had a woman that taught me this. She messaged me and she's like, and look how brave you have to be to do this, right? She messaged me, she DM'd me, and she's like, just so you know, like, when I first started listening to some of your episodes, she's a therapist, a South Asian therapist, and I had some therapists on, and I've been talking a lot about like decolonizing our mindset, especially as therapists. And she's like, I had a reaction. And then she's like, I obviously, because she's probably really good at her job, she took time with that reaction, sat with it. And she's like, I'm learning so much that I didn't realize. And so when you don't know what you don't know, we're afraid of. And I think sometimes people won't respond or give you the message, but yet, like this woman, they're connecting to what you're doing. And because it's so new, and technically you should have the look that's detrimental to us, right? And that's the thing that we're like, oh, I'll never look that way, or I'm going to try to look that way. So kudos to you to push that and say, but what if health was looking like I am, and also working on the other parts of me too, not just my outer shell that we've all been conditioned to focus on.
Yeah. And I really like that word that you use, decolonizing, because that, I think, is not a full front of my content, but a subtle subconscious one, where I'm slowly debunking what a trained, healthy eating South Asian woman looks like, despite being consistent for 3.5 years, almost 4 years training. When you look at lots of other women and their progress at 3.5, 4 years, they are so different to my body. And I think lots of comments will come back saying, you're not trying hard enough. They'll give the typical diet advice, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's that lack of reckoning that, oh, there are different truths to this. I think even not even from a fitness space, but even from maybe a religious space, or, other areas where you start to realize that different cultures have different understandings of things, and that there is actually no one truth. People start to get very triggered by it, especially if someone is so wrapped up in one truth, someone has always been in this one monocultural belief or framework. They're going to struggle a lot with understanding even the most simplest of things, that bodies are going to be presented differently. They look differently, despite having very similar healthy lifestyles. And my content, it's not about saying that we should be exactly where we are now and we should never change, and that's it. I think a lot of people do perceive my content as that. I'm going to go through moments in my life where I'm going to gain lots of weight intentionally. I'm going to go through moments where I'm going to lose lots of weight intentionally, right? And I'm going to go on these challenges. But I think where I really want to then focus on is just the here and the now. Like, I think so many people, they will post what I eat in a day, what I'm doing to work out. And it's always that subtlety of what I'm doing to achieve this, what I'm doing to achieve Y. And then people feel like, okay, I give you permission to exist as you are now, not as the perfect body, because I know you're achieving something in the future. And I want to move away from that aspect of trying to give myself permission to exist as I am now, instead of trying to give myself permission to do that because I'm going to achieve Y, and I'm saying to the world that this is where I want to be because that is the acceptable norm. And I want to give other women permission for themselves to exist in the now, to exist in the moment, to actually hold themselves and to be like, okay, I'm not where I want to be, and I'm not particularly happy with myself, but am I doing everything that I can in my power? Yes. Okay. Then I give myself permission to just exist, because that's all I'm doing.
100%. And also, today's conversation is one part of giving ourselves permission to exist. Like, there are so many other elements to who we are as beings. And I think we can't have this conversation without talking about men and the social gaze. Because I think a lot of the messaging is through misogyny.
Yes.
And we have to look a certain way. Victoria's Secret, all these kinds of things that have been thrown at us. And this is what your body's supposed to look like in your undergarments. This is what your body's supposed to look like when you wear these outfits. The size, what is a size 6? Like for a man, a size 34 is the same across the board at every friggin' store. But for you and I, a size 2, 4, 6, 8, 29 is different depending on every store we go to. And like you said, after many of us eat, there's bloating, there's all these things that happen to our body. And so now I can't eat anything when I go try clothes on. So like, I think a lot of where our body, hate and struggles come from are trying to, again, follow this conditioning of the man and what the man thinks. I bet half of your friggin' stupid ass messages are dudes. And it's like, get out of here, man. This platform's not like, we're not inviting you. This is for women. Like, get out of here. Like, why are you inserting yourself in this? Like, go be part of a stupid guy podcast that shouldn't be happening. Like when we talk about men and like, what would be the thing that you would want men to know or women to know, to think about when we put so much of it in men's hands when it comes to feeling good based on what he thinks?
Yeah, I really go back to my teenage and my early 20s because that has always been the center of my fitness motivation. And the reason why I did fitness was to please for the male gaze.
For sure.
Particularly in that relationship that I was in. Everything that I did, everything that I ate, it was all a performative task. I felt like a housewife looking back, like all of these chores, these necessary things that I had to do to be this vessel for them as a way of being a form of pleasure for them and never for myself. And I think the moment we start to unpack why we do things the way that we do, that's when all these beliefs start to tumble down. I think the idea of questioning everything is so powerful, especially for ourselves. Even just the basics of, wait, why am I wanting to run 3 times a week? Why am I having this goal of losing particularly 8 kilos? There have been so many girls that have been messaging me saying, can you give me advice of how to lose 5 kilos? I've been wanting to lose 5 kilos for so long. And I'm just thinking, why do you want to lose that like 5 kilos? Why do you want to get from 65 to 60? What is 60 kilos worth to you? I think these numbers, these trivial figures that we want to particularly hold on to and strive for, for some women, it's almost part of their identity. That particular number, that particular weight, it's this false narrative, right? It's like the car, the house. I'm successful when I have XYZ.
Yeah.
And I think when women start to really question these particular beliefs that they have, or when they start to unpack why they're so fixated on certain things like their weight or achieving a particular number, I think they're then going to start to unpack, okay, where did I even have these thoughts to begin with? Was it a particular experience that I had when I was younger? Was it a guy I was trying to impress? And I think what people don't recognize is these early experiences, they carry on and transform and maliciously hide into these healthy habits or healthy goals that on the outside looks very normal, very achievable. You can do it through XYZ. But I think people don't unpack why. And I think people don't want to, because then it reveals a certain part of themselves that they have been trying to avoid for so long, or a part of themselves that they don't want to reckon with, or something that they maybe aren't even aware of. And I think when I came out of that relationship, I struggled so much for so many years after that relationship, trying to, and I think it's one of the reasons why I stopped completely working out, trying to run, do whatever for a year and a half, just to decondition my body for everything to come up, almost like a cleanse, you could
Mm-hmm.
say, so that I can start to unpack all of these things in that moment and then come to a right place to start weightlifting. And I'm so grateful I did that, because when I did start weightlifting, I didn't come from a place of, oh, I need to lose this many kilos, I need to lose this many things. Weightlifting feels so different to cardio, for instance, where cardio is always associated with burning calories, and when you're running, you feel like you're sweating off the fat, which obviously now
Totally. Yeah.
weightlifting just, it feels different, where it's not a full body experience. I mean, yes, there are certain
You can
movements.
feel yourself getting stronger.
Yes.
And
And
that means you can protect yourself and care for yourself. Like it is like you can feel the difference of one day's strength to the other. And when we feel that strength, because a lot of us haven't known how to feel it. So if it's from a weightlift experience, it's like, oh, if that's what strength means, and I can figure out how to make it show up in other parts of my relationships, conversations, life. So I can appreciate what you're saying, because I would have, I agree with, it's like like you're building your own protection in some ways.
Yeah. And I think, you're so spot on with saying that not many women understand the feeling of strength, what that means. So many men in our lives, even women, and in fact, have always just tried for us to go down this narrow, straight road of, this is what we should wear, this is what we should say, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do, this is what we shouldn't say. And especially for Indian women, that's our way of life, that's our way of being, setting us up to ensure that we grow into this particular vessel, and that's it. We are not built with understanding what happens outside that vessel. And even just the movements, like isolating movements when you're doing exercises, and even just looking in the mirror, that certain aspects of your body are getting bigger and growing. And even the idea of switching from a 5 kilo dumbbell to a 7.5 kilo dumbbell, the idea of you lifting heavier, it does something to you over just sweating a lot and over doing lots of cardio for hours and hours and hours. Like, it's such a different experience for the females, for the female gaze, for the female identity, where we then start to recognize, shit, if I can grow and get stronger physically, you then start to taper into other parts of your life, your relationships. Maybe it's a toxic relationship that you're in, or a toxic family member, and you then start to maybe try out a new voice where you can then stand up for something, that you can be like, no, I'm not taking this shit anymore.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm not doing it. Maybe this is not the experience for some people, but it was definitely the experience of mine, where weightlifting sort of filtered out into so many other areas of my life, where I could then find strength, a voice, a position, space. And I think for men, it's not as deep. For us, for instance, even just the experience of gaining the confidence to take a dumbbell from a rack when there's a line of men on all the benches, and the one bench that you sit on, and you're in the sea of men where you're that one girl.
Yeah.
And you just lift, and you're strong and you're powerful, and you don't care that some of them are staring at you, and that they're like almost wants to make you feel that you're out of place, but you don't give a shit. I think those particular experiences are so empowering for women, especially brown women like us, that have always been taught to stay in your lane, to never stand out. It does something really powerful. And so if I could just say to even one Indian woman, any woman that's listening, that choose strength over anything else, because no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to pull you by the hand, to take you out of your situation, which we have always been taught to do. The moment I took things into my own hand, the moment I left people that weren't serving me well, The moment I started to put things into place where I could start gaining little strength in those small actions was when I started to then heal myself and actually confront those attitudes. And I really hope that women that are starting at ground zero can do the same.
I think there's a few things going on in here. One is when we start tuning into our own inner strength, I think if we're just looking at the fact, like just looking at the conversation of our body, I think we're realizing, oh, okay, so like I've been taught not to just respond to my own body, but I've actually been taught to respond to what people out here think of me and my body. And so when we start kind of starting within and doing the work and like, what's my values? Where do I find strength? Who are the people around me that help me? I think on top of that, like, and how you share your experience, I had something similar, which was leaving a lot of white spaces. So being friends for years and years and years with these white people who on paper seemed kind, but the safety wasn't there. And so not only was I questioning my body, but I was questioning my skin. I was questioning my voice. I was questioning a lot of things. And I didn't realize it until I had to leave the space and start unpacking some of that. And I think that was a big part for me, was like, our voice is so important. Yeah. And we have been taught to stay in our lane and do those things like you said. So I think we have to push that envelope and raise the bar for ourselves. Because as you said, no one's really going to do it. And a lot of people don't know how to do it. And it takes that one person in a classroom to put their hand up and ask the question that makes the rest of us be like, oh, thank God, I was wondering that too. And so it's like, who's going to put the hand up in these situations? Exactly. Whether that be you with the work you're doing or other women of color that are also trying to push the envelope out there like you and say, okay, look, we here's permission. Here's permission. Here's permission. So I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to ask you to take a moment and let's do your middle fingers up. So this is where I ask you, what do you want to put your middle fingers up to, my friend?
Ooh, so there is, and I think this is very particular to my life, and I think so many Indian women, but the saying "Lokya kenge," like the idea of what will other people think, what will other people say.
Yeah, I had the post-it up there. I was going to find it, but yes, what will other people say? Yes,
that's been the epitome, the root of all evil. For my life, for my body, for the way I think, for the way I maneuver myself. Oh my God, it has just brought so much strife, so much grief, so much pain, so much anguish. And it has really been the root of all evil for so many of us Indian women that have carried this belief constantly throughout our lineages, constantly throughout our ancestry, throughout our family history, passing that thought as an heirloom down to ensure that we adhere to the same motto to keep the ecosystem intact. And I think it has been the biggest middle fingers up for me, because it has then dictated the way we relate to each other as Indian women as well, where we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, putting others down, putting the others up. To this day, I only have one Indian friend, and it is because growing up, I was never Indian enough. I had a white name. I just never fit in. And then coming here to Australia, when I would try and find people, again, like there was that issue of, we are straight from India. You aren't. You are like a diasporatic Indian. We don't want to associate with you because you don't understand the things that we have gone through, or that we know, or that we are used to. You're too whitewashed. And so there have been all of these narratives of classing people into these different boxes in our community. And it has just been so sad to even reckon and actually put language to it and then unpack, shit, this is what we have been doing to ourselves and to our community, and especially as Indian women. We haven't made support groups where we come together and we unpack these issues. We have these important conversations like we're having today about all of these things, and how our experiences are actually what can bring us together, what can create a space where we can start to dismantle these beliefs that we have been carrying with us for so long. We can finally be the generation where we do say, no, no is enough. We cannot keep carrying this down. I think we will be the generation where we will be putting our hands up to the rest of our lineage and being like, no, I don't think this is right. I don't think that we can keep doing this. I don't think I can fit into your standard and mold. I follow so many brown creators where they have had to distance themselves from their parents. They have been disowned. They have had such grief and anguish from being able to choose freedom, being able to stand up to these arbitrary values that we have been brought up with. But I think what that has done is that has created a whole fiery generation. And I'm just so excited for where we go as a community, where we go as even females ourselves, how we then choose to question other aspects and other fields and other frameworks that we're all in, and we have our unique lens into it. I'm just so excited for where we go.
Two things. One, you now have 2 Indian friends. So you got me.
Yay!
Even though we're 1,000, you're my future, I'm your past, right? Like who knows the time machine thing, but there you go. And 2, like a follow-up to that, what would you say like this chronic dissatisfaction towards each other, what does that do to our mental health?
Oh God. I think for me, I'm going to be vulnerable here and say that I too have had that belief, right? That some Indian women are inferior to me, or some Indian women are more superior to me. And I think what that did was further accentuate that internalized racism that I've always had. I'm going to be completely blunt and honest and say that some of the women that I saw inferior were maybe they didn't have a Western accent to me, or maybe they didn't have the Western upbringing that I had, or the privileges that I had. And so I would then deem them as lesser than. But what I didn't realize was I was actually doing so much more harm to myself, because I was striving for a whiter ideal that I was never meant to fit in anyway. Mm-hmm. The idea that we have all been sold, our parents, our grandparents, that we need to strive to this whiter ideal. When we do that, we create further divide within our community and also within ourselves. And don't even get me started on the mental health aspect, because that's a whole other circular roller coaster thing that I don't think the DSM-5 has even caught up to yet. It is still so early days in terms of how they class depression, how they class anxiety, how they class all of that. And I think that is also why we see so many immigrant communities or people, when they get to a certain point in finally being privileged and finally having privileges and being classed as the citizen now, and how they then become the racist trope like the other white people as well. I think that is also why they then carry that narrative along, because we have all been conditioned of this is the white way is the right way. And again, it's really about unpacking these ideals and really just understanding that it not only does more harm to other people, but so much more harm to yourself. And I think that's what people don't realize, is that you are diminishing your personality, you're diminishing your sense of self, you're diminishing your culture, your traditions, your values. For so long, I was so ashamed of being Indian. For so long. Mm-hmm. For so long, I was just so ashamed. I was so ashamed of always going back to India, for always wearing the traditional clothing, for always eating. And I think that's what so many of us have been brought up to feel, especially when we have been the ones to migrate out of India. We have been taught to just remove ourselves completely from everything that we know, because it's all inherently wrong and just bizarre, and there's a better, more efficient way, more productive way of doing things. And the more we start to question, the more we start to reckon back, connect back, feel our emotions, to cry, to apologize to parts of ourselves that we hid for so long, that we suppressed for so long, I think that's when we can finally come back to who we are as Indian women, as a proud community, and slowly start to go through the process of a very, very long system of decolonizing the mind.
I think I relate to a lot of what you said, a lot of my journey. I see myself in what you're sharing. And I think there would be probably many of us that would see a lot of ourselves and our journeys in what you're saying. And I think that just means that we have this privilege of being welcomed with other women of color and share these experiences. And we don't know it until we start to talk about it. And then you realize, oh my gosh, me too. Oh my gosh, me too. And so I think that's how we create our data. That's how we create our research, when we open the door to these kinds of conversations. And you talked about your generation, the generation after you, like these are the generations that can start to make some change. So let's ask you to leave something for the next generation. Like, what do you want young Indian women, young women of color to never internalize about, whether it be their bodies, about the way that they were brought up, whatever it is? Like, what is it that you hope that they can shift as they evolve in their generation? Because that's what it's for. It's all about, what do we do for the next generation? How do we support and open that door for them to take the baton and figure it out? So what do you hope to leave with women of the other generation, the next generation?
Oh God, there's so many things. Oh my God. I think for a lot of us Indian women, young Indian women, we have always been brought up to never feel good enough. And I don't think we could ever erase that or override that. But I think early on, I would really love women to start to dismantle that belief, dismantle that thought process, that system that has been living inside them and been festering, and to just start coming to terms with that, to start questioning it, to actually find their own truth. The idea of never trusting yourself, never trusting your bodies, always trusting someone older to you, always trusting the wiser person, the one with more experience, the one that's whiter, that has the more Western accent, the one that has all the titles. I think for us Indian women, we are always taught to never trust who we are, to never trust our senses, to never trust our body, our instincts, our intuition. And I would really, really, really love for Indian women to start taking ownership of their own bodies, to giving themselves permission to exist, to finding their own truth of what it truly means to exist as an Indian person in a Western dominated world. I really want women to question everything, from the cultural foods that are deemed as bad to why we have to speak in a certain way to be approved. Or I really just want Indian females at a very young age to start unpacking these internalized racist thoughts, so that we can finally start to even take the first step to take up space, right? We can't take up space without recognizing why there is a gap in the first place. So if that would be my advice, I question everything and find your own truth, so that we can start developing and coming to the real truth.
So is there anything, Andrea, that you wish I had asked you today, or you want to go back, clarify, add to? You're like, hey, I was hoping this thing would come up as we come to an end. Anything that pops up for you?
Something that does come to mind is the conversation about stress and how that impacts our health, our body, and our ability to lose weight. There is such a focus in the fitness industry around prioritizing our health, making sure that we move more, making sure that we weight train, making sure that we eat whole foods, yada, 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 less sugar, saturated fats, all of that. But what people don't talk about much is how much stress impacts the body physically and then internally. I think even sharing my own experiences when I was in really stressful, toxic jobs, working environments, when I was in contact with very toxic family members, friends, when you have different ecosystems in your own life that do not cater to you, do not support you. I'm not even kidding. Like, my belly was twice as big as it is now. My ability to progress in the gym was so much slower. Now, this is just a lay experience. This isn't something that I've done research on or studied further in. But as soon as I had changed parts of my environment, my job, cut people off, find new people, built better systems in place in my environment, it is crazy how much those things impacted my body physiologically, like how my body was then able to respond to the foods that I was eating, then able to respond to the training that I was doing. And this has only been a recent thing as well. Like, this has only been recently last year as well, when I started to put things into play, where it seemed like the things that I had been doing for so long has finally started to work. And I was just thinking, oh, is this just after this many years I'm seeing progress? But I look back and I'm like, no, actually stress was a huge issue. And when you really unpack and dissect that, you have such high levels of cortisol, right, in your body, adrenaline, fight or flight, constantly alert. And when your body is prioritizing those responses, there is no room for burning or losing fat or losing weight. That is the last thing your body wants to do. We want to preserve as much as possible so that your body has the energy to run or the energy to process through all this danger and stuff. I mean, obviously you're not really in danger, but your body thinks so. But when you're in that chronic state for a very long time, oh my God, don't even get me started with the chronic fatigue and the chronic illnesses that stem from when you have that ongoing pervasive stress. And so I would really love for women to really unpack their environment as well. Is, yes, you can be doing everything right. You can be working out 4 to 5 times a week. You can be eating whole foods. You can be doing everything right and still not seeing results because your environment is so stressful that your body physiologically is just ensuring that nothing changes. And so that would be an aspect that I would love for women to unpack more about their lives and be brave enough and courageous enough to change potentially parts of their lives so that it can be better suited for their bodies to finally relax, to get out of that fight or flight response.
It's so well said. Like, our body is absolutely, when things like this are happening, is in survival mode, and it's also adapting to the stress. So it's not necessarily coping with it, it's adapting. So it's like, okay, I can handle it, but I can handle it enough just to hold things up. And I remember when I used to work, I did my practicum when I was going to school in a women's domestic violence receiving shelter. So women and their children would flee domestic situations and come and stay here, try to get their lives back together in a very short stay, and we'd provide services. And I had asked my supervisor why it was that every time the women and the kids would come there, they'd get so sick, because we'd always have like sick protocol going on. And she talked about how when your body is in that level of stress, so when you're like in a domestic situation with a partner, exactly what you said, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all these ways that our brain and our body are trying to cope and survive. And then if you throw a mother with children in the situation, she's not even thinking of herself, she's thinking of her children. And you're just trying to get through, that when you remove yourself and put yourself in an environment that is safe, your body is like, oh, okay, I can exhale. And now I can let all the things that I need to let happen. Sickness comes along and all these other kinds of things start showing up because the body is just treading. And so it's really, really important that we understand we come from ancestry that was so attuned to body and mind. And unfortunately, we've lost it along the way. And I think people are trying to bring that back, remind us. And for others, it's never left. It's always been a part of their core, which is the body will be the first to tell you in situations when when something scary is going on, and we lose sight of everyday living, fast pace, all these kinds of things that scrolling is a new one. So if we're always on our phone, never having transitional moments in life, yeah, it's hard to gauge what was that vibe like. And that was kind of what I was sharing with my husband when he was becoming attuned that day. He's like, holy shit, my body was like taking moments and telling me, dude, you're like, you got to breathe, you're stressed, or like, this is something different for you, process it, or whatever it is, right? So I think that's a really good message and a strong way to end a wonderful conversation today. So I want to thank you. And I want to remind all of us that tune in, like, these conversations are always door openers. As a community, as curious humans, we're just starting to have these conversations. So let's build off of them. If you're curious about Andrea's content and the work she's doing, now would be a great time to share where people can start following you and find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're on Instagram, you can follow me. It's just my first name and last name, Andrea Samtani. And I think it's the same username on TikTok. I also have a YouTube where I do long form content, where I share more about my life, more about my honest thoughts, show a little bit of my crazy personality, because obviously with all these experiences, you have to let off some steam in some way.
It's just character building.
Yeah. And, if you and, your audience or someone listening is just wanting someone honest, wanting someone to fight through the bullshit, wanting someone to just call out certain things, my content will be absolutely for you. I want to highlight Indian women's struggles, all of the expectations and the ideals that we've always had to be performed and we've had to fit into, and how that intersects into the fitness space that I don't think lots of people are even beginning to link together. And so if you're interested in that kind of intersection with all of these areas, that's my content and that's me. And yeah, please check me out if you're interested in that.
I'll also have your socials on my show notes for people as well. You guys always know where to find me. I'm always open to any conversation, building off of it. And any last words before we part?
Honestly, I am so excited for us as a community to get stronger, get more empowered, and to just take up space. So let's do that.